Yes, we are going to have a look at yet another Star Wars game for the Spectrum. I know, this just never ends, but this one is a bit interesting because it was supposed to be published by Parker Brothers back in '84. Now, this was an officially licensed Star Wars game. Parker did hold the licensing rights when it came to video games anyway for the Star Wars franchise in the early '80s, but the game ended up not being released for the Spectrum for unclear reasons. However, 2 prototypes of the game were recovered in 2020, I believe. According to the 1984 September issue of Games Computing, Parker was supposed to release the Spectrum version of this game and also Gyros on cartridge, which leads me to believe that the game would have been released in the UK on an Interface 2 cartridge, which of course never happened, as far as I know anyway. But there is a Timex Sinclair TX2068 cartridge dump floating around on the internet. It's unclear whether or not this version was commercially released though. I have found no further info about it. And the TX2068 was Timex Sinclair's third and last home computer for the US market, and interestingly enough actually had a built-in cartridge slot. Now, Parker did release cartridge versions for the Commodore 64 and the Atari 8-bit home computers, and of course for many of the consoles at the time. The Spectrum version of the game was created by UK developer Les Fairbrother. He seems to have only worked on one other Spectrum game, and that is actually another Parker Star Wars game, Return of the Jedi Death Star Battle, which I believe was released in the UK in 1984 on cassette, published by Sinclair Research. But enough said about that, let's dive into one of the Spectrum prototypes. Yeah, I think I prefer David Whittaker's rendition of the Star Wars theme on the Spectrum. A little bit too simple this. And since this is a ROM dump, I am playing the game on an emulator because there's no easy way for me to get that onto my real Spectrum, at least not with the tech that I have and the knowledge I have. And checking the ROM dump, it seems like the game is indeed for the 16K Spectrum. But if I run any of the 2 prototypes in 16K mode in the emulator, the graphics gets all garbled and starts looking weird. So I have to run this in 48K mode. So I'm pretty sure that neither of these versions are entirely finished. They are indeed prototypes. Or maybe Parker had problems fitting the game into 16K and just kind of gave up. And I'm also pretty sure that Parker was quite well aware of the fact that cartridge games for the Spectrum wouldn't be particularly successful, at least not in the UK and Europe in general, I think. Because the Interface 2, which was the only way to play cartridge games initially at least, wasn't a big success, and no one had one, and they were also a lot more expensive. The games were a lot more expensive on cartridge than on cassette. So I think they may have just chosen to let's not release this. There's no point. We're not going to make any money. But let's pick a wave. Let's go with the no bonus number 1 wave here. And as you can see, there's no vectors here. This is all sprite based, more or less. We do have the fireballs, and they're kind of cleverly built up by using attributes, I believe. So that's kind of clever. And when we hit the TIE fighters, they do kind of go flying off. They don't really explode, which is a bit of a bummer. And they do get closer to you. I think that was Dart's TIE Advance, right? Wasn't it? It's hard to tell, really. Going in, and yeah, you can see this is really inferior compared to the Dumark version. It's so simple, this really basic gameplay, and yeah, I can kind of see why maybe they didn't release it based on the fact that the game looks a bit pants, to be perfectly honest. But I mean, hey, this was early days. What was the other game called? Death Star Interceptor that we had to look at? That was really, really simple as well. Oops, I think I missed the exhaust port there. Yeah, Death Star Interceptor was really rather simple as well. And I think that probably sold, I don't know, okay-ish. But yeah, this feels really, really bare-boned. But it is impressive, I suppose, that they managed to squeeze this into 16K, kinda. even though it doesn't run on a 16K Spectrum, which is a little bit strange. But I suppose maybe could be some sort of emulation issues. I don't really know. Let's blast this and blow up the circle of death. And we get an equally naff explosion. Just as naff as it was in the... even more naff, I would say, compared to any of the arcade home conversions, really. But as you can see, the TIE Fighters, they do get closer to you occasionally. I think we caught a glimpse of that initially. Ah, here we are. See, they do get closer. That's nice. But yeah, again, it's super simple. And I think I actually blew up Vader's TIE Advance there. It went flying off the screen, I suppose, and maybe it didn't quite blow up. But hey, I like to think that it did. Going in again. So I think we're going to get the surface run here, which, yeah, it's a little bit underwhelming. I think this is still sprites. It may be vectors. I don't know. It's really hard to tell. We could try and see how they look when they get close. Yeah, it could be vectors. I don't really know. It probably is, right? Because, again, trying to get this to fit into 16K with pre-scaled sprites, yeah, probably not, right? And the game does have a feel of being unfinished. It feels like something is missing. Can't really say exactly what, but something is definitely missing. So here we are in the trench run, and we can now also get these amazing catwalks. That's the right word for it, I think. Let's see if we can avoid smacking our face against these horrible things. And it's pretty simple. I mean, again, 16K version of Star Wars, that's pretty impressive, I guess. But is it fun? Well, no. It really isn't. It really is rather dreary. But maybe I would have been a little bit more excited in 1984, seeing as this is a very near Star Wars experience on my humble spectrum, so maybe I would have been impressed. I don't really know. It's hard to say, but I think I would have been a bit impressed. Even though, again, 3D Star Strike, vastly better. And I don't remember exactly when it was released, but not too far from this one. Or when this one should have been released. It's kind of wonky. Sometimes it looks like you're hitting the fireballs and yet they don't disappear. Oh, really? Yeah, again, probably not finished. Probably very much a prototype and stuff missing and room for improvements in many areas. But at least it runs fairly smoothly, with the exception of maybe that zoom in on the Death Star there. Looks a bit strange, right? And we can navigate around here. It's quite hard to do. We can move left and right to try and avoid the towers of death there, but it's really kind of hard to do, and it doesn't feel like you're actually moving. So the sensation of speed and movement is not amazing, and I don't think they could have added too much to this game, given that it would have been limited to a 16K release. And I do believe it is possible to have games larger than 16K on the cartridge standard, but I don't think that would have been viable back in the day, because it would have made the cartridges even more expensive, and let's face it, no one wanted to pay a small fortune for a game that you could get on cassette, and would be vastly cheaper. And I can't imagine how much a 48K cartridge would cost. It may not have been possible without hardware modifications as well to the interface too. So that was a weird release by Sinclair, releasing the Interface 2, which was basically a cartridge slot and 2 joystick ports that used their own proprietary standard, so that was also completely useless. No one wanted that. So weird decision by Sinclair, really not very smart. And I suppose cartridges were more common in the US compared to Europe, where most games were on floppy disk, or cassettes. Whereas in the US, I think many games were released on cartridge as well, even for the home computers. So makes sense that they kind of wanted to release this on the Spectrum on a cartridge, and then they realized, oops, this is not a very good idea. And yeah, the game is really simple, isn't it? I'm hardly losing any shields, he says, and take instant damage. I don't really care anymore. It's rather dreary, this game. I think I've showed you pretty much everything there is to see here. We could have a little bit of a peek at the trench here. As you can see, it's really hard dodging, turning left and right. It's just so damn slow and it doesn't feel like there's anything happening. Can I dodge these towers? Yeah, I could. Success. And we do get slightly different configurations here in the trench with the catwalks. And really, I thought I hit that thing. Okay, I didn't. And yes, it makes sense to assume that this is indeed vectors. This is actually just drawn, not sprites. So yeah, that is Star Wars from Parker. Not amazing, but hey, who knows? Maybe this would have sold if it was released on cassette in '84. But I'm pretty sure there were better games, so yeah. And I couldn't find any reviews of this game because it wasn't released. I did find a preview that is kind of weird, so we're just going to have a look at that before we end. And as I said, this was a preview of the game from TV Gamer, a UK magazine. And it was kind of for all of the different versions of the game. And they even gave it a score. Value 4, graphics 4, sound 4, gameplay 3. But they don't actually tell us which version they are previewing and if they've even played it. But they do mention that the game will be released for the Atari VCS, the G7000 video pack. Not sure if that version was released, to be honest. For the Atari home computer systems, the Commodore 64, the ColecoVision and the ZX Spectrum. And it does say requires ZX Interface 2. So it's a bit weird handing out ratings for a game that is being previewed, but maybe they were having a look at the coin-up. I don't know. And they do mention some other Star Wars games as well, so maybe it was a feature about Star Wars. And with that, I'm just going to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this peek at this weird little unreleased Spectrum game. And as always, hope to catch you next time. Cheers.